can start. So before you give yourself an introduction, I just wanted to say thank you for doing that with me. And for the people who don't know, Nick is basically that person behind the scenes who helping me with the links. We're putting the schedule together with some of the pictures besides my Russian assistants, but he's doing just a major job, and I'm glad to have him here too.
And you've been doing an awesome job too. But this whole idea was Bossy's idea. When he messaged me, I was doing nothing during quarantine. I was like, sure. Like, if you want to do it, go for it. But then it kind of just like snowballed and it's been fun. But in Bossy and I, we also formed this company like a year and a half ago. We just wanted to do basketball camps overseas, get more opportunities for coaches. Originally, I was thinking like, let's do camps, all over the world. But I think doing like coaching clinics, building like a kind of a global community, doing meet and greets I'll talk about, like at Summer League, the showcase. This is stuff we already kind of do informally, but we'll just make it a little more formal just to get coaches to meet each other from all over the world. That's our whole goal. And so I'm originally from Portland, Maine. That's where I am right now. I work with the South Bay Lakers and LA Lakers in their basketball department. And I'll talk about my history of where I worked previously, but thanks for coming and hope I can help you guys land a job in the US or overseas. I'm just going to talk about general things I've seen. And it's not like I'm the expert at this. It's just things I've seen over the last 7-8 years, which helped me get jobs. I've seen help other people get jobs. And I also talked to a lot of coaches who kind of gave feedback on like what works and what doesn't work, and figuring out this maze of trying to get a job in basketball, which is extremely difficult, but we all love it. So it's worth it.
All right. Let's get it going. Now you can share the screen. All good.
Okay. Do you see just the... Oh. Do you see the presentation now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so again, I did coaches and players, but I saw that it was almost all coaches that signed up. I was just like looking at all the names. I will touch on players. If people do have questions on how to get into the US as a player, I will touch on that. Just feel free to put in the chat box whenever, and Bossy will read it. So these are the general obstacles to working in the US. Obviously, I'm kind of tailoring it to international coaches, but this will go for US coaches as well. It's extremely competitive. There's a lot of jobs in basketball, but there's not many jobs that pay you enough to like make a living off being a basketball coach. Very few. And you can work in the business side, maybe make a living doing that, but to actually be on the court, I didn't believe when people told me that. I'm like, yeah, you don't get paid working basketball. And I was so naive. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, because you only read about the head coach that makes $4 million a year, but that's like less than 0.1% of the basketball world in the US. So extremely competitive. Yeah. Work visa is difficult. That's difficult in a lot of countries. So obviously American employees don't need it. So if a team's deciding between two employees, sometimes like, well, we don't have to deal with all that paperwork. It gets expensive. That is a hurdle that teams have to deal with. I think teams get an easier visa, so it's possible, but it's still difficult. In the network, I think this is across, not just in sports, but this is in general. People hire people they know. So if you are in Russia, like Bossy, or China, or wherever, Austria, shout out, you're gonna hire people that you've already worked with. Like that's just how literally the universe works. It's just and generally when you're in the US, you're gonna be around more American coaches anyways. So that's just kind of a hurdle that I'll talk about strategies to get around this, but low pay for entry level. I'll also talk about the different, pay things, which I wish I knew when I was entering this, I don't know if I would have done it. Maybe I wish I didn't know, but I'll talk about the different pay. I mean, sometimes people with a family, like I want to work in basketball, and I'm just thinking like, can you work in basketball? Like, can you work 80 hours a week and get minimum wage? Like, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't really do it at 23. I did it, but and I think this is just not knowing the NCAA world. So there's a lot more jobs in the NCAA basketball, like college basketball. But I think just not, obviously you could have gone to university, got your degree. That's great. But it's still just kind of understanding the college basketball scene and culture. It's just like something you kind of, I don't want to say grow up in, but it's just more prevalent in the US. So there are international college coaches, but I think it's more uncommon because it's just not really a thing overseas. It's growing a little bit in Canada, but a little bit in Australia, but it's not like in the US. Oh boy. Did I skip over this? Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where I went on this. Okay, well, I skipped over a few. So this is my basketball journey. After I graduated from Colorado, well, my senior year at Colorado, I worked at Kroenke Sports. They own the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Rapids. They own the lacrosse team. They own Arsenal as well. So it basically a big conglomerate where they own a lot of sports teams. It was my senior year, and I did community relations intern for Kroenke Sports, which owned Denver Nuggets, and that kind of opened my eyes to basketball. I was always obsessed. I was a huge Celtics fan. I was in Colorado streaming every game. I'm like, I need to do something with this, but I didn't know like that there was all these jobs. So once I got that internship, kind of opened my eyes. After that, I drove to the Bay Area. I worked basketball camps in the Bay Area. I stayed with my aunt and uncle, which is key. I would never have afforded that. And eventually the Stanford staff hired me through camps, and I'll talk about camps in a little bit. After Stanford, I was pretty burnt out. I was video coordinator. I was not happy. I was just over it completely. I wanted to have a life. And I met Shenton Wei, who's I saw watching this, but I met him at the Final Four. He had a couple connections in Australia. He connected me, went down to Sydney Kings where I volunteered with Sydney and AIS. You just kind of network your way. It's a small basketball world. Worked with Huddle, which is sports code. So I was able to, get paid actually, which is nice. And then after Australia, eventually I got a job in Los Angeles with South Bay Lakers and then LA Lakers. And now I'm doing both. I was more on the coaching side. Now I'm on the front office side. And then I think, so you see all these logos on the bottom, they all look like great, but there is like big gaps. I mean, there's a gap between Kroenke Sports and Stanford. That was about a year. Stanford and Sydney, that was about like 5-6 months. Australia and South Bay, that was like 4 or 5 months. And then, so I mean, it looks like a straight line, but it's an absolute grind, this industry. You just get to these dead ends and you reach like, you think you're rolling, and my resume looks like a straight line, but I reached like 5 or 6 dead ends where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to work in basketball again. I'm just like not making any money, not making any progress, no connections. It's like, it's really hard. But I think, one special tip, I'll have special tips throughout. I think, obviously overseas, you don't have the Lakers or Stanford, but you still have teams like the Sydney Kings and Australia. So I think if you can just connect yourself with big names overseas, like roll with it. Because when someone says, they'll downplay, well, I work with like the Sheshka youth team or, the AS Monaco youth team. I'm like, you should advertise it. Like, that's huge. Like Mbappe played for Monaco. Like, that's awesome. I think in general, if you can work with national teams, work with big names, I think that's key because people will know it. It's just, or you can work with McGill University in Canada. Like, that's just, they may not be the best basketball team. I don't know that, but I've heard of McGill. So I think connecting to big names as much as you can is key. Glad I know how to go in order. So I threw these together. It's a lot of numbers, but just focus on the greens. The greens are kind of the entry level. Can you see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the greens are kind of the entry level jobs. So this is like a top D1 team. Generally, there's 1 to 2 video coordinators, 1 to 3 basketball assistants, and then there's 5 to 20 student managers, which I'll talk about. Low D1, you can see like the total staff's about 5 to 9 people, maybe a video coordinator, maybe 1 volunteer assistant coach, 0 to 2 unpaid. So these, D3 assistant coach, maybe you could be one of those, but those are generally in college. These are the types of positions you want to try and get: the video coordinator and the basketball assistant, like a coaching intern. They're all different titles, but you'll kind of see when you see the staff directory. So on a professional staff, this is what an NBA coaching staff looks like. Every team has a head coach, I hope, but then there's 4 assistants, 3 to 4 player development coaches, 2 to 3 advanced scouts. But again, the video room, if you're trying to get into coaching, that's your entry point. Now, athletic training, if you're a strength coach, it's a little different. They all have their internships too, and some of their coaches are international, so it's obviously possible, extremely possible. But video coordinator with coaching that's what you want to target. Video coordinator or video intern, also known as like coaching interns. I wasn't a video coordinator for an NBA team. I was a video intern, but I was a video coordinator for a G League team. And there's different types of G League teams. Some G League teams are staffed a little bit bigger, so they'll always have a video coordinator. Obviously some don't. Sometimes it's the assistant coach, but just so you get an idea of like who is on staff, so you can kind of do what you want with that. And we'll email these out after all the presentations along with the YouTube video. And this is the front office. So I was looking at a bunch of different front offices. It's kind of driving me crazy. I spent so much time on these, but you kind of get it. But still, again, I think it's way more difficult to break into an NBA front office out of college. I've seen it, but usually I hate when someone says you have to know someone, but you kind of have to know someone with that situation. Usually you enter through the coaching, the video room, because that's just like the grunt work. No one wants to do it. It's a lot of time. And that's just always kind of on the coaching side. It's possible to be a basketball ops intern. It's just very rare. G League, these jobs are actually more possible. If you're a basketball ops assistant where you'll be driving a van all the time and driving to doctor's appointments all over Los Angeles. I'll talk about that more after. But then, small G League teams, some of these staffs are tiny. Even when people are asking if South Bay has anything, I think we're between these two. We've got this tiny staff. It's really a GM and me, but whatever. But yeah, it's small staff. But again, I think G League's kind of the entry point, and I think video coordinating and being an intern's the way to go. So I showed you student managers before. So in college, they're at a big university, they have between 5 to 20 student managers. Even smaller college, every college will have student managers. And but essentially what that is, they're a student, and either undergrad or graduate student. What do? They help out in practice, they rebound, they do laundry, they do video, statistics, anything that the team needs to get done. They're kind of just on the side of the court, wiping up sweat, like doing everything. And what also is key in college, you can have a head coach, 3 assistants on the court, and that's it. Like you can't like hire, the North Carolina couldn't hire Michael Jordan and have him just go on the court. Like there's very strict rules. He can go on the court and talk, but he can't coach. So if you're a student, that bypasses that. So if you can be a graduate student or an undergrad student, then you can actually go on the court, rebound, be a dummy in defense. Hopefully you don't get hit in the face, but you can do all those things. So that's key. So teams need you. Do they get paid? Sometimes. It's pretty rare. Sometimes they'll give scholarships. A lot, sometimes they'll help you get into college when you have no business getting into the college. That's true. That happens with athletes too. So if you're, trying to go to a school that you wouldn't get into, maybe try and talk to the basketball team. Like, hey, like I'd love to be a graduate manager. You go for the year and they can get you in a little bit easier, and they can, I don't know if I should say that, but it happens. And then they can, they'll help you get into with all the tests that you have to take and stuff like that, because they want to add value to the program by being a student. So they're not really paying you. You might get a scholarship to study, but you can add a lot of value to the coaching staff. Why do it? Like, just do it. I mean, I wish I had known this in college. I didn't even know there were student managers. I didn't know that was a thing. I went to Colorado. I would have loved to have done it, and I didn't know about it until after. When I worked at Stanford and I was around all the student managers. But it's extremely common to work in basketball and be a manager. It's kind of like a rite of passage. I wish I had that. I was like an honorary manager, but I wasn't a full-on manager. And I think I'd look up, and with college, also all the email addresses are available. Every college, unless it's like Coach K, you probably can't email him. You can email every single coach. So reach out to coaches, ask about opportunities. There's like 300 D1 schools. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. So what is a video? Yep.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. When you were in Colorado, do you think if you would be the manager at that time, do you think it would help you to get hired later and skip that position that you had at Stanford?
Yep. So when I went to Stanford, originally I was a coaching intern, but if I was the manager at Colorado, I think I would have jumped to a video coordinator position. Now, obviously you got to think like, should I be a video coordinator at a smaller college or be a video intern at Stanford? I'd probably still, it depends on the situation. It's like a top-notch program. You probably still want to take the lower role at a big school. So and actually the head manager at Colorado, when I was there, and I felt like an idiot for not being a manager, and he was the GM at the Northern Arizona Suns. I want to say like when he was like 27, 28. And so yeah, okay. Absolutely helped him. You just build these connections. I think he started working with the Denver Nuggets. I mean, that's just something you have to do. Yeah. I think it's, yeah. Um, so a video coordinator, I've done this at Stanford, the Lakers, South Bay Lakers, and with Australia. Basically, they report to the head coach. Um, Generally, you communicate more with assistant coaches, but you're just the coach's assistant with life and with everything basketball related, everything. So obviously, you do a lot of video, scouting, downloading games. You edit every game you've never cared about in your life. People think it's cool until you've edited it from like 10 straight hours of some pointless game, but you do learn everything about basketball you could ever know. You make sure everything runs smoothly. So every day I kind of felt like I was like a stage manager in like some New York City play. Just everything has to go smooth. The film, the practice, the lunch after practice. When a recruit comes to Stanford, it's like the president is coming to Stanford. You have to like, set up the barbecue. I mean, you got to do everything. You're just so yeah, so you're also the highlight video master. So I made so many highlight, pump up videos. But jack of all trades. When someone says job description, like if someone's asking you, well, what's in the job? This job's not for you. You're doing everything. I probably can't even share everything I had to do. There's nothing like bad, but it's just like absurd. Tim O'Toole, who I think is watching, he was at Stanford, one of my favorite assistants. He says, I was the steam that makes the engine run. So that's what the video coordinator is. It's not the most important job, but also it's probably the most important job on the team. You're just like the middleman for everything. And a lot of people in basketball have been the video coordinator because you just understand how everything works after you've done that. So when you ask for something, the work that goes into that. And I think that's really valuable. And I don't want to really do it again, but I'm glad I did it. I did it. Yeah, and the pay, I mean, it's probably, higher programs in college and NBA teams. If you're a full-time video coordinator, it'll be like a livable salary. But a lot of times, including in college, it'll be minimum wage. If it's hourly, it's awesome because you just rack up like double time and probably triple time if that was allowed. But, I'd say like you might need another job in the summer. It's just the way it is. I hate how that's a thing. And I think a special tip with this is a lot of people reach out to me saying they took some class to learn how to do video. I would not suggest that at all. I think you spend a lot of money on these classes. So I mentioned video, like, highlight video master. You can learn that on iMovie. You just figure it out as you go. And yeah, there is video scouting, but all those are things you learn within like 2-3 hours on the job. Like don't spend $1,500 to learn how to use Synergy or whatever. Just, you kind of learn these things on the job. So yeah, just save your money with that. So basketball ops assistant, I was with South Bay, and then I guess with Stanford at the start. So you kind of report to the GM or director of basketball, general administration work, airport runs, doctor. I mean, I was basically a taxi driver, but I know how to drive around LA now. So you help out in practice, sometimes always in the G League because of small staff, sometimes in NBA, general team logistics. You do some video scouting, but in person is very rare. You're just bottom of the totem pole. So I'd say about like probably 10 to 20% of your work is like actual basketball. You could know nothing about basketball and really do these jobs. But pay, unfortunately, I'll probably need another job, which again, I don't necessarily agree with, but I've worked, could write a book about all the side jobs I work to make it work, but that's the way it is. So it's an absolute grind. It's not like you can do these jobs and just do that job. It's just like, it's a lot. And I think a lot of people want to work in the NBA, G League, college, whatever, but just know that, it may, you probably see it on TV and that's great, but it's not always like that. On TV is like half of 1% of the actual job. So how to grow your NCAA network. These are all things I wish I had known when I kind of started this process, when I drove to the Bay Area. Fortunately, when I went to Stanford, the director of basketball there, Jeff Lemire, told me, do NCAA camps, like just do basketball camps. And I didn't even know that was a thing. So I get there, I did camps at San Francisco, Stanford, Santa Cruz, Cal. But then by doing these, you meet the people working at the camps are a lot of local video coordinators, student managers from all over the country. And I'm still friends with a lot of those guys. And a lot of those guys have worked from like, they were working in high school at that point. Now they're working the NBA or whatever. So you meet so many good connections at these camps. And if you're international, you may not be able to get paid. I don't know how exactly that works, but usually you'll stay on campus. You'll do everything. And then you'll also meet the current coaches and staff. I'll talk about just that dynamic a little bit. I think look into being a graduate manager. Sometimes it's 1 year programs, 2-year programs, but that will get you on campus. Connect players and coaches. As I said before, there's email addresses for every single coach in basketball outside of the, world famous ones. Just email them, reach out. But I'll give some tips on that as well. But, send them information, send them some players in your local country, send them scouting reports. I don't know this stuff as much with recruiting events, so maybe attend some like AAU events or events in Vegas. I know the coaches will be busy, but you could probably meet some contacts there. Another special tip, work camps. So the basketball camp game, this is classic. There should be movies about this, but it's basically like The Bachelor where, it's obnoxious, but there's like 50, probably, some of these camps, there's like 50 coaches and there's like maybe 1 to 2 intern jobs. And sometimes those jobs aren't even open, but it's just like a race to the top. It's really bizarre. So everyone's kind of fighting for this one job. I think you just need to realize you got to chill out. You're not going to out coach anyone. So everyone will kind of try and coach like the 7th or 8th graders and draw up their plays and, get all amped on their like camp championship, like chill out. Like literally no one cares. But I know you mean well by doing that, but just trust me on it. Yeah. But if you do get an opportunity, rise up. I mean, one of my stories on your scores table, they threw me on the table doing the clock. I have no idea what I'm doing, like petrified. It's like hundreds of people out there. And, you just got to figure it out. That happened. Stuff like that happens over and over. And it's really scary. And you just got to like, just do it. Just pretend like you know what you're doing, whether it's like reffing or you're just going to be thrown into these uncomfortable situations. Just go for it. If it goes bad, you can blame me. But and then I think so, be yourself, but also ask if they need extra help always. And that's kind of how I got going at Stanford. I was like, hey, like I'm in the area, I'm staying down the street, which is half true. It was like 45 minutes. Like if you ever need extra help, I'm happy to help. So before the camps, I started like setting up, getting all the t-shirts going, pumping up all the balls. And then at the camp, you've got to give it your all. 100%. I mean, I was staying up till 2, like not doing anything fun, like, handing out pizza and stuff, and then waking up at like 5. And you just got to like not blink, just get through the camp. No excuses. Like you got to give it your all. I mean, it's 50 people for one job. You can't mess up. Just laser focus. Just get to the finish line. So I think another kind of funny story is just go with the youngest kids, because everyone is trying to coach the oldest. They're always trying to like, show their stuff, whatever. Coaches don't care. Like they probably just took a day trip to Atlanta from LA. Like they don't care about the camp. But if you can coach the youngest kids, maybe the coaches can kind of relate. So the Stanford coaches, they had a lot of younger kids. I didn't know that at the time. But if you coach, I coached the Fire Sharks and I coached with Will Salzman, who coached the Dunkers. They're 1st and 2nd graders. And we treated it, we took it so serious. Like, we reffed it like it was game 7 in the finals. And it was kind of a show, but the kids had an absolute blast. And like one time the Fire Sharks, which was my team, we were up like 12-2 and this guy hit a buzzer beater. So we won like 14-2. And we freaked out, like, oh my God, like we're broadcasting it. And then like the Dunkers all started crying. We're like, oh no, like you're good. But it's like, that's what it's all about. I mean, for me, like if I was hiring someone and I saw someone being enthusiastic about coaching the kids who cried all day, that's the guy I want on my staff. So I'm sticking with that. Like, I think that's a way to stick out. But that was so much fun. So you can ask questions whenever. I have like, I think 8 more slides, so we'll have enough time for questions. But to meet NBA G League people, so again, with college basketball, work a lot of camps. That's my suggestion. I think you need to meet people in person, which is not ideal during a virus. But so Summer League, I think, is basically a must, whether you're in anything in basketball. I think you should probably try to go to. That's Las Vegas, a lot of cheap hotels. I don't know when it's going to be in the future, but it's so much fun. It's just like a giant reunion every year. Portsmouth Invitational, that's in Virginia, mid-April. Very easy access. A lot of these things, they have like hard access to talk to NBA, G League personnel. Portsmouth is just like open, like anyone just come talk to you, which is for me probably bad, but for if you're trying to break in, a great time to meet people. Professional Basketball Combine is up and coming. That's in Los Angeles in June at the Mamba Sports Academy. Again, that's at its infancy. So if you can meet the people who run that, you can try and get in, try and help out at all of these, like reach out to all the people who run it. I know Bossy has helped out. I took out the Combine because the access is really hard. But if you can volunteer at any of these, that's huge. And you just start meeting the players, start just growing that network. The network's going to be key. It's going to be people is going to get you the job. So then the G League Showcase, it's limited access for now, but I don't know if that's going to stay. So I think they want to make it into a bigger tournament, but that's also in Las Vegas in December. It's going to change, but that's awesome. I mean, so I think with all of these, we already do this Global Stars kind of meet and greets. We don't even call it that, but we always in Vegas or Virginia with Ben O'Neill, with Bossy, we'll just like text all of our friends who work in basketball, like, hey, like meet at this bar at Chandelier Bar in Vegas. That's our spot. Meet at this bar at like, 7 p.m. or whatever, and just meet a bunch of people. So that's what we'll do at all these events. That's what we already kind of do. We'll figure out, we'll have like an email list with this and stuff. So I'll text you the instructions because that's, hopefully we can help give advice on anything that you need. And it's just fun. I don't know. It's a good time. I don't need to tell you to go out and get drinks, but so there's different levels of a working relationship. A stranger, so if you're reaching out to a stranger or walking up to them, it's probably like a 0.3 success rate that you get a job or something. A friend or acquaintance, like someone you've kind of worked with or just a general friend, probably like a 10% success rate that they can get you a job. But I think the most important thing is a former coworker. That is how you get your jobs. Like, even though I'm good friends with someone, I don't necessarily know how they've worked. So, but if I've worked with someone and I know they've done a good job, maybe we're not best buddies, but whatever. I know you're going to do a good job and hopefully, and I'd like to hire you. So I think that's just something. So people always talk about, oh, you must have known someone. You know someone. It's like, you don't. Once you start working, you meet people, and you're, with Tim O'Toole, I worked with him at Stanford. He's seen me work all night. He woke me up in the locker room when I was sleeping there. He knows what I'm going to do. Like, there's no question. So when he reaches out to one of his contacts, there's no question. That's why I just think if you can start working in basketball, start growing that network, start working with different people, then that success rate can hopefully go up because they're really going to vouch for you when you do apply for a job. So this is kind of, when I was doing this, I'm like, is this like dating advice or what? But
that's the perfect one. Much needed.
Yeah. So to all the single guys out there, no, I was kidding. So to a stranger, what should you say online? So I did message a lot of people on LinkedIn who reached out to me, and I get maybe like 3 to 4 messages every single day. So if I don't sign on LinkedIn, I already have like 20 to 30. So I think just knowing that, I'd always wonder why people weren't responding to me. I did the same exact thing. I still do on LinkedIn sometimes. Be short, be straight to the point, intro, goals, appreciation. I don't think longer than a paragraph. I know there's like a lot more you could write, but just be very basic. Because if I see a big page, again, you just don't have enough time in the day to respond to all these. Because in other industries, I thought of this, other industries, that's what you do. You ask for like 10, 15 minutes phone call, but in other industries, you don't get people like coaches and just front office people. They get a lot of people will want to break into the industry. So you just get overwhelmed. I'm sure the same things in music. People want to break in, and you can't just call a music producer asking for 10 to 15 minutes, because probably 1,000 people did that day. So I just keep it short, intro, goals. If you can provide value to that contact, send a scouting report on players, try and get creative. Don't just do like, top 10 in the draft, maybe do some obscure conference. Then kind of update them on your progress every 3 to 6 months. If they don't respond, they're going to read it. Social media, maybe I kind of just send it and just add people on Instagram and just, if they win a game, like do the clap emoji. Don't be like annoying, but just try it. I think that's good because then you can kind of get to know each other a little bit. And then a special tip, I think a mutual friend or contact's key to kind of break the ice. That's just, people want to help other people. So if Bossy wants to talk to one of my former coworkers, I'm going to connect them because it's like, yeah, I want to help Bossy out. That's my guy. But I think just once you start meeting more people, that bubble will get bigger and bigger. When you start, you may not have many people to reach out to or have them reach out to, but that's going to grow in time. Things to avoid. Oh no. So I think avoid asking for anything, even in text. I think Conrad Chow's watching. That guy does an amazing job with this. He works at Nevada. He's graduate manager. He'll just send me a scouting report. He'll send me something he's been working on. And he's more of a friend now. He's not a stranger, so obviously. But I met him at Portsmouth, Summer League, everything. But I love how he'll just kind of tell me what he's doing, and it's not like I need to get a conversation started, because a lot of times it becomes work. You know, people ask for feedback on things, and I get it. I want feedback on things too, but you don't want to be adding extra work for these coaches and people, because it just kind of gets annoying at a certain point, and it's just like you can't even really do it. It's just too much, especially when you're super busy. I mean, now I could do it, I got time, but just try and avoid giving extra work to these people and add value, as I said previously. And don't get upset if they don't respond. There's hundreds of messages. They read it, if short. You know, it's long, probably not. And just don't reach out too often. You know, sometimes people are like, hey, like, do you see my resume? And they sent it like 2 days ago. I'm like, yeah, you know, like, okay, like, I don't know when next season starts, so I don't know anything. I mean, it's just like, of course. So in person, operation in and out. So I have like the Navy SEALs, James Bond, whatever you want to call it. If you're in person, say you see me in Summer League, G League Showcase, or anyone, if you see like, I don't know, Jerry West, introduce yourself, tell your basketball experience, and then tell your goals. Another thing on that, be proud of your team, regardless of the level. I was talking to Brian Walsh about that. A lot of people that work with high school teams, work in middle school, work in elementary school, they're like, yeah, I'm just working with a small team. It's like, I find that more impressive if you work in middle school, high school, than if you're working with, you know, a manager at Michigan State, which that's great. But if you're working at that low level, I know you're dedicated to basketball and you're in it for the right reasons. And I see that over and over. People kind of downplay the team they work on. Like, represent it. That's your team. And just know that it's more impressive. Like, you love basketball. Like, literally, like, you're doing it for basketball. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you just love being part of the team. Own it. Congratulate them and give them some type of appreciation. So if you've heard about the coach, or the scout works for a team and they found an amazing player, like, congratulate them, be like, hey, that's awesome, I love who you guys found, Caruso or whatever. Like, people love being complimented. Just like, do it, you know. And in basketball and out of basketball, like, no one's gonna be like, oh, like, yeah, stay away from me. Like, yeah, thanks, you know. If they do act like that, which has happened to me tons of time, I used to walk around Summer League and people would just like not even look at me, and I haven't forgot those people. But yeah, I mean, it is hard though, because it gets a lot, and maybe you just had a terrible game at Summer League and you don't want to talk to anyone. But yeah, give some appreciation, and if they don't treat you very well, then you can blame me. But yeah, just be short, be quick, and get out. Like, give your contact information and then get out of there. Just leave. Like, don't linger around. It gets like really, just know that these people are really busy. Get in and out. All your information, like 45 seconds, and then just like run away. Like, kind of play hard to get. And then obviously give them some value if you can. So I talked about value, like scouting reports. That's awesome. Like, no one does this. Or analytics reports. Just walk around Summer League with like a packet, put your email address. This guy, Alex Merg, does that. He got a job with Oklahoma City eventually. He's doing like software sales. I'm like, dude, just keep doing these analytics reports. You're going to get hired. Like, it's as good as what anyone does. So I think, yes, hand out scouting reports, avoid like videos if you're working someone out, but maybe walk around with a resume, business card, but just get your name out there and try and give value more than ask.
So I've got a quick question while I have a break.
Yep.
Is there a specific template for the best scouting report? Like, how would you make it different from the other people?
Yeah. Let me see. Well, I don't want to pull it up. So keep it short. I like colors. Yeah, I'll pull one up after. I just got to think, like, I don't want to be like TMI, but okay. I think keep it very short in general. And I like doing different tiers. Rankings is key. Sometimes people write huge paragraphs. Just do like your top tier, be like G League player, do like Summer League player, do maybe G League tryout player. I love tiers, love rankings, and then I do really short, you know, maybe a sentence on each guy. Yep. Because we're going to look into them more. So just, you don't need to put much. But things to avoid: read the situation should really be number one. And I should like put that like 6 times. So I'm just amazed. this might get me heated. But sometimes I'll be at these events and, I'll be like scouting and I'll be like this guy trying to watch a movie. And then someone will just sit next to me and I just like keep talking to me, keep asking questions. Even if it's like borderline friend acquaintance, like know that they're working a lot of the times when you're like seeing these people in person. That is critical. I mean, like, and I think a lot of people miss this. It's just like they kind of forget that like you actually have to work. And this happens over and over where it boggles my mind. Like, it's just like, who do you think you are? But like, it'd be the same thing if someone was coding some, software at their job and someone sits next to them and starts talking to them, like, leave me alone. Like, what are you doing? But I think just read the situation. So like, there's not always is gonna be a great time. After a game, you try and talk to a coach and he's trying to talk to the media. It's probably not the good time, but just like kind of read the situation, be extremely respectful and give space. You're not gonna, at a gym, it's not the time to be buddy. And it's just, I think just keep remembering that. Yeah. Don't name drop ever. It's just it's not going to help you. I think unless you're kind of name dropping a mutual friend, but make sure that like it's an actual friend, not like some buddy's buddy or whatever. But just avoid that. Yeah. And then don't ever linger. Just play hard to get. I hope that helps.
So there's a question, and sorry for interrupting you again. There is a question. I think it's right on the topic. So how would you want the person to be dressed at those events? So at the Summer League, other events, should you always be dressed business or casual?
Yeah, Summer League is so hot where it's probably more casual. But I would, like shorts, but I would still, I would absolutely suggest dressing up a little bit. Like wear this with this is my go-to shirt. I also didn't pack much from California, but wear like a collared shirt with shorts when it's like 120 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius. But I think you want to dress up a little bit, so more probably closer to business casual. Yeah, because and I remember when I went into Stanford and I was like, I want to work camps, and that's kind of like they hire like 50 coaches, so it's not a big deal. It's not a job interview. I'm just signing some paperwork, and I was wearing like business casual. I had like khakis and like a nice shirt. And I remember after I was hired, the guy's like, yeah, I was just impressed. Right when you walked in, you're all dressed up. And it's kind of like the movie Step Brothers when he's dressed up wearing a tuxedo into like the janitor job. It was completely unnecessary, but my dad said to do it. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. But I think you're better off dressing up a little bit more than not dressing up. Yep. So this is, this industry gets really competitive, and I've learned this as I've kind of gone on a little bit, but just understand the people around you, the friends, acquaintances, the video coordinators, the other team, whatever, you are always with them. You're never against. When you play, you're against, whatever, but you're going to get a job through the people at the same level as you. There's just kind of like a community that you have, and you've done the same job. You've been in the same conference, and maybe you don't like each other or whatever, for whatever reason. You probably do, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. But just be with these people. Don't be against. Don't be, if someone gets a job, congratulate them, because they're probably going to hire you in the future. So just remember that. Like it's friends hire friends. You're going to hire people you know. So keep these contacts good. Don't burn those bridges. Go out with people when you can. Get drinks. Go out to eat. Go walk around. Whatever they want to do. Whenever you have the opportunity. I'll be dead tired at one of these showcases or after a Laker game, and I just want to go sleep. And you got to go out and you got to meet these, and you do want to, but sometimes you're just totally tired. If it was not like, you consider it kind of work related. It's like work, like go out to eat, every time I do it, I'm happy I did it, but go out to eat with them, hang out with them, spend as much times with these guys who work with different teams as much as you can. I think that's key. Give props when they succeed, support when they struggle. I think that's awesome. Like, I'll text different guys around the G League or whatever, like, hey, great job. Like that doesn't happen that much, but it's always kind of cool to see when other people are watching your team or you win a big game. Everyone loves compliments. Just compliment them. Like, just, may not even watch it. Like, great game. Like, might have been ugly, but whatever. I think add on social media helps keep in touch. I think just one thing to remember though, so give props, whatever, but I think avoid the painful small talk. So like when the quarantine time started, everyone's like, what's new? And I tell my roommate, like, God, like, no one texted me until you couldn't go anywhere. But I know like it means well, but it's just kind of those painful conversations where they're just kind of pointless. Like maybe say, hey man, like I'm back in wherever, working my thing, like hope you're well. Like just keep it very simple. Like again, if it's a friend, I'm not going to give you advice on what to do with a friend, do whatever. But if it's someone you don't really know, keep in mind that it may be like that conversation is, I don't want to say pointless, but I mean, that's kind of my opinion. So yeah, just be wary of it. Don't be annoying. You're probably confused. You're like, you're telling me to reach out, but you don't want to be annoying, but just, it's a fine line. Just figure it out.
That's the art.
Yeah, it's a very fine line. So former coworker, what to do? So you've already done your time with them. Like you've worked hard. Hopefully, let's just pretend like you worked hard. You did your job. Everything model like employee. So obviously keep in touch with these people. You have nothing left to prove. You don't need to play that game. Like it's already done. They're going to help you get a job, but I think just make your intentions known and your future plans known. So, if you want to do whatever, if you want to get into the coaching in G League or NBA, whatever, I don't know what it is, could be anything, but just let their intentions known. Cause then you get these extra antennas. So if, I might not hear about anything, but if someone hears about something in Australia or wherever, hey, that's like an extra antenna that you wouldn't have heard, and they'll let you know about it. So I think just letting your intentions known, which is kind of uncomfortable sometimes, but just be like, yeah, I'd like to, get back to Australia, or I'd like to get over to the scouting side. Just let them know, because then that's like an extra like pair of ears that you get out there. So that's key. And I was pretty bad at that for a little bit. It's like some secret mission. No, you got to get your intentions out. So if you do get an opportunity, you got to give it your all, because remember, you got 3,000 people breathing down your back. At the start, every day is game 7. Like when I was doing those camps, everything's got to be perfect, like no mistakes. Just, it's going to be kind of miserable. It's like any job, I don't need to give you advice on this, but just, you got to give it your all. And if you give it your all, you got nothing to worry about. If you give it your all and you don't get promoted or, whatever, gave it your all, or you lose, like you gave it your all, like I don't really care. Obviously it stinks, but I think just kind of shut up and do your job. So most likely you'll be hired in the lower part of the totem pole. But if you are called upon, like let it be known, whatever. Stay patient with this. It's hard because a lot of the salaries are really low and you're working like around the clock, and it's just might be miserable. But I think what I keep saying, and like what I kept thinking about, and actually Johnny Dawkins at Stanford kept saying that, not about me, but just about the team, because a lot of our players are borderline draftable. He's like, the cream always rises to the top, like in coffee, which I don't drink, but I put the picture here. But just know and have faith in it that the cream is going to rise to the top, like in anything in life, I think. And you may be like, well, it's not working out for me. But like Greg Popovich was a D3 coach when he's like 30 years old, and now he's the best coach in a very, very long time. I'm not going to get in the debate. I don't know, but just be patient with it, and just like, so don't be frustrated when other guys are getting jobs. I would always like so mad, like, dang, like how did I like, like I didn't even get an interview. Just focus on yourself and just do everything you can do with your current situation. Be happy with your current situation. And I think that's key. Just have faith that it's going to work out. Maybe so this is difficult. Like maybe your goal is to be, GM of the LA Lakers. I think if you can just still have focus on your, which, may never be possible. I don't even know if it's, like whatever, any team, that goal may be impossible. But if you just kind of stay on this route of giving it your all, focusing on what you have right now, I think eventually it works out, because you're going to be on that path. And again, you'll have nothing else. Like if you just kind of control what you can control, then the rest of it's going to figure itself out. And I think that's hard. A lot of people will try and do too much or whatever, but that's just kind of what I've seen and experienced. Just be thankful for what you have right there, and own what you have right there too, because that's all you can control. I think eventually, ask coworkers for introductions, but I don't even, I was going to take that out, but I think eventually these just happen naturally. Like you're going to go out after a game, or you're going to be at the game and someone talks to you. Just the introductions will happen. But, if there is someone you want to talk to, don't do it the first week you've worked with a coach. Like maybe wait until you've proven that you're a good worker. But definitely ask for those introductions eventually. So I think just the final keys, if you just take these from me, if you want to work in college basketball, work NCAA summer camps, be a manager if you can still be a manager. I see Drew Hoffman there. You should be a manager. I know you're already a manager, but if you're going to be a manager, you're going to be on the right path. So yeah, work NCAA summer camps. You want to work in the NBA G League. I think meeting people in person is important. Go to these events. It's really fun anyways. You meet a lot of people. You'll just keep growing your network. Try and give value to these scouts, to these coaches when you can. If you want to scout, start scouting. Like don't make up any excuses. I've told people that you should just start scouting and they're like, well, I know this guy who can, get me. Okay, dude, I told you what to do. Like whatever, you do you, man. Another save money tips. Again, I have a lot of problems with these schools. Sports business classroom's awesome. Don't get me wrong. That's that summer league. It's pretty expensive, but that builds a community. They teach you the skills. But the community is going to get you the job. And I think just remembering that everyone in this chat or everyone you meet throughout your basketball career, those are the people that are going to get you a job. A lot of these will advertise, you'll get an interview, or they'll teach you some specific skill. You're going to learn that skill on the job in 2 hours. Don't spend $1,600 on that. But again, sports business classroom, which I went to, they do an unbelievable job. It's at summer league. But that builds a community. Once you finish that, you kind of join the brotherhood or sisterhood of everyone who's attended that. And that's what it's all about. And a lot of those people have gone on to work in the NBA, G League, college, which is kind of cool to see, coming from essentially nothing. So this is my contact information, email address. Feel free to reach out to me. If you came from LinkedIn, I appreciate that. Yeah, reach out. Happy to answer questions. Remember what I said, I'm not trying to be unpleasant when I'm saying don't ask for anything, but if you do have a simple question on something or you want to talk at some point, I'm happy to help. But just do remember that tons of people are doing this. So just keep that in mind and maybe just start giving value to people like me. Just start doing a scouting report. And I just love when people just send me something and don't ask for anything. Like someone said, hey, I love that you're doing this coaching summit. That's awesome, that makes me I want to help you. That's great. But I think I think just trying to provide value to a lot of coaches. I can't say that enough. And we'll email this out along with the YouTube video once we figure that out pretty soon. But you can reach out to my email address, Instagram, whatever. And I'm also always playing volleyball, 8th Street or North of Pier. But don't actually do that. But if you do want to play volleyball, let me know. But if I'm happy to answer any questions. If I didn't cover something, feel free to ask. And
I figure out just by you going through the presentation, the last one is another tip how people can build communication with you. Just Hermosa Beach volleyball court, 8th Street, and that's it. Just not through the basketball court.
Yeah, I'm always there. Not now. The beach is basically closed, which I agree with. But I live. And I think, that's another kind of thing I didn't touch on at all. I don't really like to talk about basketball outside of my job. And Greg Popovich talked about how he's a wine connoisseur who coaches basketball. Brett Brown's a travel guy who coaches basketball. I'm honestly I got a lot of other passions. Obviously basketball is my work passion and I love it and I'll do it the rest of my life. But think about I'd rather talk about traveling, living abroad, my time in Australia. If you're from Ukraine, let's talk about Ukraine. I think all that stuff's really cool. I think just keep that in mind. It doesn't always have to be basketball focused. If you've been to Maine, talk about how you've been to Maine. That's an instant. I'm going to talk to anybody about that. That's cool. But just keep that in mind. Yeah. It doesn't have to be laser focused into basketball. A lot of people have a lot of interest outside of basketball and don't even want to talk about basketball. So.
And that's another great tip because when I was talking to one of the coaches, his idea was to do the video meetings, or let's say one-on-one video breakdowns, to do it not in their room, not in the facility, but in the coffee shop, just to make sure that the player he's not stressed. He's more kind of like relaxed. And that's the same thing. Imagine if one person is the player, another is the coach. So getting in touch with you and building a good relationships with you, starting it on the basketball court, might be harder than if you just meet you playing volleyball.
Yeah. I think with all this, it's kind of funny. Like, I work in basketball, but a lot of it has nothing to do with basketball. It's really just like relationships. It's like 90% of the game. And coaching, which I'm less knowledgeable about, but even front office, we're talking about feelings and fit and I mean, it is what it is, but that's it's like, am I like a psychologist or am I a basketball person? It's just kind of funny, but just keep that in mind, that the sport is a human sport, and that's very important.
And then let's go to questions. So first one from Israel. How can you tell at an event like Summer League if someone works for a front office or a team? Can you distinguish them easily?
Yeah, so a lot of teams, every team, you get a credential and they'll have different colors on them, and they'll say their name and their the team they work with. So you'll know. And also there's different sections of the stadium where front office people go. It's like section 203 and it's like gated off. That's pretty common at a lot of the events. I'd just be wary of that, because when a lot of people hang out right outside the sections, when you go out, it's just like, no, like I don't want to talk to anybody. But just keep that in mind. Just read the situation, but yeah, you'll know who works for a team. It's pretty easy, but again, just like read these situations. Just be very respectful and pleasant.
And just one more thing I wanted to add, do the research early. So if you go to, let's say, South Bay game against, I don't know, Maine Red Claws, just do the research, search the photos, just to make sure you know how the whole coaching staff looks, how the basketball ops staff looks, just so you're already familiar with some of them.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's even talked to me at a Laker game or South Bay Laker game. I don't think anyone's talked to me, but I am kind of a moving target. I'm bouncing around. A South Bay Laker game, someone could easily start talking to me about that, my career or whatever. And I'd be happy to talk to them. It's not like at Summer League where you have that conversation 100 times a day, but come to G League games. It's the easiest access you could ever have.
Yep. All right, next one. Thoughts on point guard college camps? So I guess it was when you were mentioning the kids camps, NCAA camps. So what do you think about point guard college camp? Is it a good one to build a connection?
I've heard of the camp. I don't know it specifically, but I think anytime, the whole point of doing these camps is just to build your contacts, and that's what it's all about. Like, I know people who worked at these camps and now they're working in college, mostly college. But that's truly what it's all about, building that network. I think the advantage to doing it at a university is, say you do it at UCLA or you do it at Cal, maybe you get to know the assistant coaches or the director of basketball, one of those, a little bit better. That's just important if you wanted to work at Cal or UCLA. And also, I didn't talk about this, but do the women's basketball camps too. A lot of people will just do the men's, but there's unbelievable jobs on women's basketball and WNBA, which I don't know why I left that out, but I think your entry points are WNBA, G League. I think so. That's the whole point. Is like, if you want to work for one of the specific colleges, maybe start building the network by going to those, UCLA, Long Beach State, whatever. But regardless, just work camps to meet different coaches who are working at these camps. That's the most important thing. So yeah, I'd suggest that.
Okay, next one. How do we start scouting now? Do you mean like watch old game film and write down your analysis of players, or is there something else you were referring to?
Yeah, so there is synergy, but I think that's what every NBA team, international team uses to watch video. I think it's kind of expensive. Yeah, I mean, if you can get access to games, I don't know what the best way. Maybe like ESPN Plus has a lot of the games from the past year on it. Even YouTube videos, if you can just find a game. But I think with scouting in general, so then if you're overseas and you're scouting, just do the local league. I've told people in Australia, like, scout the Australian league and like no one's really done it yet, but like no one does it. I mean, it's just like I would love to find the next Mitch Creek, the professional player playing down in Australia, or the Hungarian league, which I don't know much about it, but tons of great players come out of the Hungarian league, whether they're they go to like Russia or they go to like Barcelona or they come to the G League NBA. It's just like that's where like if you're not quite good for the ACB or one of the top leagues in Europe, it seems like they go to Hungary, and then from there they go. It's kind of like the G League in Europe, which I'm noticing. But yes, scout that. I've never seen a scouting report of the Hungarian league. I don't know. Maybe you could go to the website of these leagues to get access to the video of the games. But again, I would stick to rankings and I'd stick to scouting things where they're less obvious. I'll get a lot of like top 30 draft, which is awesome. But you also have like 50 people on an NBA team like focusing on the top 30. Like focus on like the Big West Conference. Again, I've never seen a scouting report from the Big West Conference, and there's going to be really good players from that conference. So I think just kind of being unique in this type of scouting report you do.
And this is, I mean, again, the whole hour you're talking about how you can separate yourself from the others, because there are plenty of people who want to get the same type of job. And so scouting Big West, for example, it can be a great separator.
And just do it every single year. This guy, Jonathan, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, G, he worked at Oakland University in, I think it's Michigan. He keeps sending me scouting reports from his conference. It's awesome. And that's where like Kendrick Nunn came from, Kay Felder. So there's really good players in these places. But I think this goes back to coaching the camp where take the first and second graders. No one wants to do it. It's just kind of just be a little unique rather than coaching the eighth graders, drawing up your plays. Same with scouting. Don't do the top 10. Do get obscure with it. Do the top, if you're, you get it.
All right. Next one from Tim O'Toole. Hopefully I said the last name right.
You did.
No, my bad. So Nick, this is tremendous, and I fully agree with that, Nick. What's your ultimate goal? I think most coaches need to keep their goals in front of them. They may seem crazy, but thoughts become things, and you approve.
Yeah, my goal has changed over time. Originally, it was like I want to be a GM of a top NBA team. That still is my professional goal, but I'd just like to make a positive impact through basketball, not to sound like a cheese ball, but I think internationally is kind of my passion. So when Bossy and I started this international basketball company, just the goal is to connect coaches overseas. We're going to go all over the world to do these. That's my passion. Just when we did our camp in Austria this past year, I had so much fun, and you work with kids who they're from living in Austria, but they're from all over Europe. I just think that's the coolest thing on earth. But at the same time, I do love working for a team. I think just something about working with a team where you get that community, but you also get the platform. So if you're the GM of one of these teams, or your top executive at FIBA or whatever, you get this platform where you can make a difference, and that's what gets me rolling. But I've worked for the Lakers, obviously a top team, Stanford. But I think if my dream job would be to work for a be the GM or something at a team in Spain, like Barcelona or whatever, I think that would just be the coolest thing on earth. I think everyone's always focused on the NBA, but I'm a different cat. So if I could, that's a massive platform, one of those top teams, and I think that'd be cool.
I'm going to keep that in mind about Spain.
Yeah. Who knows?
All right, next one. Without NBA or collegiate resources, what tools do you recommend people using for a film to begin scouting, as they might not have access to Synergy?
That's the hard part, because I was kind of assuming that Synergy is like a thing, but you can still, I think on YouTube you can still find quite a few games. I'll look at ESPN Plus because I think they have a massive library of games. Overseas, I'm not quite sure. What do you use to download games? Synergy?
So now, when I was working in China in CBA, so they basically had their own YouTube where they would stream all the games. And so at that time, I was working for the player, and I was not allowed to have. I didn't have any access from the team stuff. So basically, all I just play the game online. When I'm watching it online, I write down the notes, and then I just rewatch it again and cut the film. So usually it took me, I want to say 1.5 hours to break down the film for the player. And so that's how it is. I mean, there's no other way. And I feel that if people can do a little bit more research, they'll be able to find more games, because we take Russia and we take, let's say, second division in Russia. You can watch it only on the Russian website. We take Hungary, the same thing. You can go to Google Translator, translate, let's say, Hungary, the name of the division in basketball, translate it to Hungarian, type it on Google, and most likely you have a website where you'll see their own games.
I have a blank scouting template, which I'll show you now.
Yep. And I mean, Synergy is great, but that's the easiest one. If you have Synergy, that's perfect. But still, even now, while I already have the access to Synergy, I still figure out that whenever I'm working with the players, I would love to watch more the full game instead of the clips from the Synergy, just so I know how the players reacting to different situations on the court, if he made a turnover or if he missed a shot or if the foul was not called.
So this is the type of scouting report I taught. Yeah. So I think this is key with everything. Kind of keep it short. I love colors, and I think rankings is key, because if I just want to look at it for 20 seconds, you kind of figure out what you need. Then I'll put notes like right here. So just the name, the team, position, points, rebounds, assists, if you'd like. You know, sometimes contact information or their agent is really important. But I just put a short paragraph like big center, rebounds well, strong. Like just keep it very simple, because I can form my own opinion on them. But then kind of rank like what type of, you know, if it's like NBA player or like two-way player, just kind of rank their what you think they are too. That's kind of important. I like rankings.
All right, so we got Rob here, Rob Hire. Good to
Rob,
see you.
Robbie Flyer.
And here's a question: is having social media a must to get into coaching?
Yeah, so I talked to Isaiah Fox about that, and he would say, well, like Luke doesn't have it, or like Luke Wallen or Richard Jefferson, which I think he has Instagram. I still think it's important, because you don't need to post much, but just to like keep in touch with people, and say you do a job somewhere, then I know that you did a job somewhere, because I can see that you're coaching somewhere. I just think that's kind of, because if you don't, then I mean, I think social media is really strange, and I don't always agree with it. But I think if you don't like fall off the face of the earth, but a little bit, because it's like, I don't know what you're doing. So eventually, like Isaiah Fox, he did get social media, and he posts like a bunch of random photos of sandwiches and stuff. But I still think it's important, just so people can kind of keep tabs on you and see what you're doing, and seeing what where you're coaching, what you're coaching. I do think it's important. I think social media is strange, but I think it's something to it.
Got it. All right. Question from Juan Manuel Garcia de Leon. How about basketball in Latin America? So yeah, you did mention South America, so can you give a little bit of feedback on that?
Yeah, so basketball in South America, it's actually the talent's good, but a lot of times what I notice is players in Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, when they play in those leagues, they'll stay in those leagues. You know, sometimes they'll make the jump to Europe. Maybe I think because there's not much scouting down in Latin America. I don't know exactly why. But a lot of the times these players, they're really good, but they just don't make the same jump as, you know, like a Spanish player, maybe because there's more access to the players in Spain or Russia. But tons of good players. Obviously, Mexico has a couple good teams, couple good leagues. Ciba Copa, LMBP. But yeah, I think that's what I do notice. I think there's better players in South America than we are finding. Absolutely.
Okay. And would you think that scouting Latin America will be a separator for the people who are trying to get in?
Absolutely. I've never seen a scouting report from anything in South America. There's definitely good players there. You know, if you looked at the Argentinian team in the early 2000s, they had 3 studs, Scola and Ginobili, and probably someone else. Brazil has a lot of good players, but I think, yeah, if someone could somehow get access to the Brazilian league, their film, that's a gold mine. There's going to be a lot of good players in that. It's just a matter of getting that info out.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that let's say you get 10 people who send you the scouting reports, and 9 of them are going to be sending scouting reports from Europe or college, and then only one person will be sending you something from Latin America. And probably within the next couple of months, you'll remember that person more. At least you will know his last name or something, just because he's the only one who's sending you the information.
Yeah, and just know it's a process. If you keep doing it year after year, then you kind of start expecting it. Like, oh, like, I should be getting that soon. That's what I get from that guy Jonathan up in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge and then a lot of teams will hire consultants overseas because a lot of teams, the basketball world's massive, and I think teams, although they do have tons of money, they don't always spend it. So
Mm-hmm.
it'd probably make sense for the Lakers to have a scout in South Latin America, but we have two international scouts. One's in Turkey, one's in by Barcelona. So I mean, flying from there to Chile is a flight, and it doesn't really happen because they have all of Europe to see. They have stuff in Australia. They have stuff in sometimes China. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times it's just there's not enough eyes down there, but there's absolutely the talent. We see that in the Olympics every year.
Yep. All right. Next one is from Leo Lee. Hi, Nick. What suggestions you have on how do people with international background present themselves to the teams in NBA?
I think so. Kind of what I said before, where a lot of the international people they get access to really good players overseas. So in the U.S., to get access to top NBA players, G League players, the national team, it's extremely difficult. In Australia, it's way easier because it's like the fourth biggest sport. So when I wanted to work there, it's like, yo, you want to help out with the national team? Sure, like come. We don't have anyone helping us, but so I think if you can kind of provide, if you can reach these teams, reach these players at the higher level overseas, because I think a lot of times it's easier to do that versus doing the US, then say you can
Mm-hmm.
work with one of the top players in China or get in touch with them or get in touch with a top team in China. That kind of puts you on the pedestal up here where you're that team of China can just like contact the Lakers or whatever. So I think it's just getting that access is key.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next one from Sayed Sayon. 1 second. Thank you, Nick. Great information. I actually lived in Maine for a year working with the Red Claws in 1819, but I have two questions. One, I'm currently a video coordinator at Fordham University, and I use Synergy and Sports Code for films. What will you say is the biggest difference between a video coordinator in college level and in the NBA level, since you have experience in both?
Yeah, it's a great question. So hope you enjoyed Maine too. Not too cold. Um, College, I'd say if you're a video coordinator, it's probably like 85% not basketball. It's a lot of recruiting, a lot of just busy work. I don't even, people's asking what I did. I'm like, I don't even know. But, driving people to the airport, setting up barbecues, recruiting events, all these things that really have nothing to do with basketball. So I think that's what we're worth keeping in mind. Most of your jobs recruiting and the process around recruiting, but you're not actually going anywhere. You're just like, so every single day we had like 120 recruits that we were looking at, and I would look up their scores every single day. So I would like Jimmy Smith scored 23 points, and I would email all them to the coaches. I think maybe O'Toole. So then that coach would then text the player like, "Hey, like great job yesterday." So a lot of things like that where you wouldn't really think about, but that was an hour and a half every single day. Like games don't stop on Friday, so um, that was awful. But yeah, so I think a lot of it just has to do with recruiting off the court. When NBA is more focused on the actual game, the actual practice, there's really no other stuff going on. I think it's probably a lot less work in the NBA. I think these teams are kind of expanding their staff. They're hiring more video interns. Because I mean, when I was video intern with the Lakers and video coordinator at South Bay, I was still working like 80, 85 hours a day because there is so many games. So you just have to edit all these games, but the technology is getting better quick. And a lot of former video coordinators like Brian Walsh was telling me like, oh, you got to like you have to tape the VCR or whatever. So the technology is getting better. It's not like it was in the 90s, but I think in general, NBA, you're focusing on basketball. College, you're focusing on like everything else except basketball, but you still need basketball to be perfect. Still the most important part of the job.
Okay, and the second part of the question was, how did you stand out from the rest of your coworker when you was an intern to earn and promoted to new being director of basketball operations and player development to their G League team?
Yeah, I think so. my whole time with South Bay Lakers, there wasn't, I mean, there were other interns and employees, a lot of them actually, but I think a part of it is luck because we went through like Byron Scott, Luke Walton, I could be forgetting Mitch Kupchak, Magic Johnson, and we had a lot of changeover. And I think sometimes when there's a lot of changeover and you're at the bottom, you kind of just keep floating your way. You just keep surviving. But I think the only why I was able to do that is because I was able to focus on my job. I wasn't trying to do too much. You have to stay patient, which sometimes is difficult. But I think just owning what your job is, not being annoying, and just being consistent. You just have to show up. And when you're that low, you're kind of like this someone that the team shouldn't have to worry about. So I think I was just able to own my role and do it well, which is hard sometimes. I mean, a lot of times I want to be doing more, like, oh, this is frustrating, but you just have to just remember the cream always rises to the top and just stick with it as hard as that is. Just own your role.
Mm-hmm. The next one is from Anthony Georgopoulos. For someone like me who hasn't had any experience in basketball, would starting off in the G League be something that is possible, or would you say starting as a student manager at a university?
If you are in college, I would absolutely suggest being a student manager. And I was in your role. I didn't have like really any experience, and sounds like you're Greek too, so I can appreciate that. But I think you need to just start working in basketball. I think that's absolutely key. I tell that to a lot of people. They want to work in basketball, but they're not doing anything in basketball. It's like, good luck. Like, I don't know. You want to be an artist, but you're not going to do any art. I mean, I don't I don't know what to tell you. But I think just start working basketball. I think student manager is the easiest. If you can work high school, work middle school, anything, just start growing that basketball network and start growing that experience in actual basketball. I jumped pretty quick to Stanford, and looking back, I wish I had more experience at the high school level, middle school level, because it's just a massive jump. So you kind of go like being a race car driver to like Formula One. It's like, I'm not ready for that. Like I need all the basics first. So I think embrace that too, enjoy it, and maybe you'll realize whether you like it or you don't like it too. But I think just start working basketball, just find a way. Yeah, student manager, high school, middle school, just do that, and then the rest you'll start growing your network and it'll figure itself out.
Okay, next one. Is it possible to show a template itinerary of how you schedule travels, hotels, training, camp, etc.?
I'll do that. I don't have that on me. That is pretty interesting. Yeah. Brian Walsh will present in a couple days too. Maybe he can add that. He's doing how to be an assistant coach 101. But yeah, that is interesting. There's different theories on what you should do with a training camp, like, go hard, or I'm sure Brian will want a lot of practices. But yeah, no. I'll have Brian add that. I think he'd probably have a better idea what to do than me.
Okay, next one from Drew Hoffman. Drew Hoffman, since I'm in high school, how do I get in touch with the coaches?
So if you're in high school, yeah, it's a great question. Drew, I would start reaching out to, when you start looking at colleges, maybe start reaching out to their coach, be like, hey, I want to be a manager. It's pretty rare and I think you're already a manager in high school. And if you aren't, maybe look into being a manager or playing. But I still think if you want to be a coach or you want to work in basketball, again, as I said, you have to own your role. So just start being a manager. Like, people think it's easy to run a practice, but there's a lot of really small things, like how to talk to a coach, how to wipe up sweat, how to do the clock, all these things how to make Gatorade, all these things that you don't really think about. You got to figure out the formula pretty good with the Gatorade. Sometimes the coach would look at it like, whoa, like, what is that? But start being a manager immediately. And once you start looking at colleges, reach out to the coach at that college and see if you can be a manager, because sometimes it's really competitive to be a manager. Like if you want to be one at Kentucky or Duke, it's like a massive application process. For the most part, if you want to be a manager, the team's going to take the help. And definitely look at the women's teams with these colleges too, because a lot of people just focus on the men's teams. The women's coaches know the same coaches as the men's coach. So they have the same contacts, and a lot of times they're even better. I remember I was at Stanford, and like George Karl would go to who's going to be presenting in a few days on this, which would be awesome. But he'd go to the women's team at Stanford, not the men's team. It's just like, we were great too, but their women's coach knew everyone just like our coach did, Johnny Dawkins. So start being a manager in high school to get back to it, and start reaching out to the coaches at these colleges to make sure you can be a manager. Just say you're interested, maybe drive to a game, meet them. I think that would mean a lot. It doesn't happen a lot, but if you can just be like, I want to be a manager, I want to be great, they're going to appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Next one from Edgar Xavier Vargas. Great insights, Nick. Awesome to get to know your origin story. What was the thing that impressed you the most when working in Australia?
How hard the players went and how selfless the players were. It's just, I think a lot of times in the U.S., maybe it's because we play so much. There's so many practices. I don't know, but you get down to Australia and they play so hard and so together. It's just like the national team. You know, they don't have all the all-stars. It's changing a little bit. They're starting to get some more stars, but it's just the togetherness I loved. And I think at the last Olympics, watching like Lithuania and Australia, these teams, they don't have the NBA talent, but it shows when you play together and you play as a team, you can win. And it sounds so cheesy, but it really is. If you can just get that like that chemistry and that fire, anything is possible. And it kind of changed how I thought about building teams too. Like that Bulls team I've been watching The Last Dance, as everyone probably has. Yes, they had Michael Jordan, but they had these pieces that were so elite. Like Dennis Rodman was elite. Their shooters were awesome. Scottie Pippen, Luke Longley. So they just played together as a team. They played super hard, and that's why they were so successful. You know, they do have Michael Jordan, but it's that tenacity that you can't teach, and that's what Australia has.
Got it. And there's a good comment by Grade Levine. She's saying, reach out to the OBOs too if you want to be a manager. They're often more responsive than coaches, depending on the level.
That's a great, yeah. The director of basketball is probably, I told you to reach out to coaches, but probably the director of basketball is best. But if they have the video coordinator, if they have a manager to reach out to them. I should have said that. I'd probably reach out to the director of basketball a little bit more. Yeah, good point.
Mm-hmm. And one more question from Israel. Do you mind giving an example of the best dialogue you had networking with someone who you wanted to be recognized from or build a connection with?
So let me think. When I was reaching out to someone, I'm trying to think. I mean, when I met Shenton Wei, when I was at the Final Four, I wanted to move on from Stanford, and we were with a mutual friend, Chris, who was working in high school. He was either working in high school, or he was working with UT San Antonio, who's now in the Clippers organization. He's like almost an assistant coach. It's pretty amazing how he's worked his way up. But I think how Shenton I did ask for help. I'm like, hey, like I just want to go to Australia. But again, I'm kind of showing interest in his home. So he's going to want to like help out. It's just like someone wanted to coach high school in Maine or wanted to go down to Australia. I'd be happy to help because it's kind of like I could connect with that. It's like that's my home. So I asked, I'd love to have a couple connections. And he gave me like Tim Hudson and like 3 emails. I remember when I was like flying down, I was in the airport, like typing like my email. But I mean, that was critical. Without those, I wouldn't have been successful. And he didn't need to do that. But I think, again, if you kind of, when I hear that he's Australian from his accent, and I'm like, I want to go work down there, that's unique. And fortunately, he was able to help me. I think that like kind of connection helped with just, I want to live in his home. That was absolutely critical for my time getting down to Australia. And I'm always appreciative for that, him and Tim Hudson.
Got it. And now, while there are no other questions, I have a quick my own. When you were starting, you said that maybe 5 times in your career, you were at the point where you were not sure if this basketball thing is going to work out and if you should quit or you should keep trying. What was your mindset at that point? How did you manage that situation where you don't know what's going to happen, but you still keep trying?
Yeah. I listened to another podcast, not to be that guy, but Troy Justice talked about this, just the gaps in the basketball. It's never really talked about, like you are always, even when you're in the industry, you're always kind of wondering like, do I have a job? If we lose, will I be fired? It's just, that's extremely difficult. And I think it's very underrated. I mean, if you have a family, you want to win basketball and you always have to worry, like, am I going to have a job? It's just something to think about. When you're my age, if I lose my job, I'll come back to Maine. But, when you have a family of 4, it's just, keep that in mind. It's a difficult industry all across the world. I think what just kept me going is not wanting to quit and having already given so much, like all the time I spent at Stanford, just the 130-hour weeks, whatever I was doing. And then in Australia, just the absolute grind. Didn't get paid at all in Australia in basketball. I had to work like 4 side jobs to make it work. So to like give up on, and even with the Lakers, I mean, a lot of low pay. I would like clean sailboats. I would serve weddings, and then I would go to work. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like 8 hours, and then either 8 hours before, I'd start like 5 a.m. cleaning sailboats, or 8 hours after, I would serve weddings till 3 a.m. But then when you give that much, you're like, I can't quit. It's like I like lived like extreme poverty for 5-6 years, and it's just like when you give so much, it's just really hard to quit. Probably was never always the smartest move, but I'm glad I kept going. And regardless, it was an amazing journey. I would suggest it to anyone, just the things you learn, whether you do this for forever or a couple years. It's a lot of life lessons you learn, and the people you meet is what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure. And one more thing on the mental part, you already know that I asked that to all the coaches or all the players that I talk to. How do you set the goals? Is there something where every 2 months you have your short-term goals and you're trying to see if you reach them or no, and you're trying to adjust them? How does that process go?
Those have changed over time, I think, because there's a lot of basketball things you can't really control, like, jobs. If I want to be the GM or whatever, again, it's like completely out of control, but you can control what you can control. I think goals I've changed, and I just want to, I've kind of changed it completely. I just want to be able to be making a positive impact in the world. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to be happy. And I want to make sure I'm happy. I don't want to go back to where I was doing the whatever 100, living in the locker room. I want to make sure I'm like enjoying life a little bit, because it was a grind for a while. But I think my main goal, making a positive impact in the world and being the best I can be. Every day is not going to be your best. Every week's not going to be your best. You may be sleep deprived or whatever. But I think that's in basketball or not. It's just if you are kind of showing up professional, doing your job, doing it well, then you don't have anything to worry about. Just that's all it is. Yeah. You don't have to look back like, I wish I had tried harder so Tim O'Toole could reach out to someone. You don't want to have that worry. Just give it all when you have that opportunity.
And the last thing I want to ask before we all go, knowing everything that you know now and going through the experience in NCAA with the Australian national team with South Bay, what advice would you give to younger self when you were just starting at Stanford?
Cool. It's a good question. Yeah, I know the answer. I think enjoy the process. I think really enjoy the process. I think a lot of times in life and just this industry, you're always kind of like looking forward. I remember I was in Australia and I was like, kind of looking forward to maybe a job with the Lakers. And at that point, I had no idea. I was trying. With Stanford, I'm like, I want to work in the NBA. Like, I don't want to do this. I mean, I had reason. I was kind of miserable. But I think if I could just kind of appreciate what I have, I was at an amazing university at Stanford, amazing campus, amazing food. I ate all the food because that's all I could afford. But if I could just appreciate that a little bit more, if I could appreciate my time in Australia, even my time in LA when I was working 2 jobs, I was not always happy. I think it's funny. Everyone's trying to get these jobs, and then a lot of times people are miserable. But there's reasons for that. You're working 2 jobs, it's just kind of miserable. But if I could still looking back, I kind of miss the times where I was grinding like that, and just the challenge that every day was. That was looking back, I think the most fun part, when you just have like nothing and you're just every day is like, I'm trying to meet someone and I'm still trying to do that, but it's just not the same type of like coming from nothing attitude, which I miss. So if I could just look back and appreciate those times, appreciate when I had nothing, when I was in Sydney and I'm just kind of waiting for someone to text me, or I'm like I came here for basketball, but no one's talking to me. But I mean, looking back, it's just kind of funny. And I think just keeping the faith and that's going to work out. I'm not religious, but if everyone is, like, go for it. But just having that faith that it's going to work out and just have fun with it.
Got it. Nick, thank you very much for your time. And this was priceless. I mean, a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, a lot of insight, and I hope people took notes and they use it too.
I had a lot of fun. And again, if anyone watched this who I don't know, feel free to reach out. It's like I'm happy to help. You can tell that I probably like helping people. I'm passionate about this. And best of luck. And yeah, reach out whenever and hope this was helpful.
But when they reach out, they got to remember the guidelines that you gave them.
Yeah, well, this is so they're not quite an acquaintance. You're not a stranger. You're not like a nothing, but just keep it in mind. I mean, if I don't know if I want to, just keep it in mind. I don't want to sound like a prick, but I don't know if I want to call 30 people after this, but I'll try. Absolutely, because it means a lot that you guys came to watch this. So yeah, I'm literally happy to help. If you do have specific questions on what you should do, happy to help. But remember, you're not going to get a job from me. You're going to get a job from someone that you work with, someone around. Maybe 10 years from now, you might get a job from me, but that's after we get to know each other. But yeah, just remember, you're going to get the job from people around you, people you work with.
Mm-hmm. And again, thank you everyone for joining. And hopefully I'll see some of you or everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow we have Alicia Kamaki from Sierra Canyon High School and also Ogden Stojakovic, the Director of Player Development for Denver Nuggets. The schedules will be sent out to you by email. And that's it. Thank you again.
See you guys. Have a good day or night, wherever you are.